When you start with SAP certifications, it can be tough. It can be difficult. I know from my own experience. That's why I want to help you with this video. I'll help you choose the correct certification for yourself, and I will try to explain how you can and how you maybe shouldn't approach an SAP certification. Who am I? My name is Tobias Steckenborn. I currently hold about 13 SAP certifications, and I hope my knowledge will help you to pass the certification exam you are trying to solve. So let's get started. SAP certifications. Is there a right certification for everyone? I don't think so, but who knows? What you should clarify for yourself is what kind of value are you trying to get out of the certification. There are a lot of different certifications, but most of them are either focused on developers or on project managers. If you are just a business user, there are not that many certifications that will help you. From my experience helping some people to achieve the certifications, know that there are some common themes. Most people are trying to either pass the certification to show that they know something for promotion, or because they just started the job and they need some kind of credentials. So all of these reasons are valid, but I think you should approach your learning for your certification in different ways, depending on what kind of value you're getting out of it. If you are approaching the certification just for your employer, that he sees, okay, you're somehow able to do it, I would say go for an efficient path. What do I mean with an efficient path? Let me explain that a little bit later in the video. If you are going to prove your own knowledge or you want to build up foundational knowledge, there is something else that you should keep in mind. Certifications are a sort of credentials, but they don't really prove that you're able to do it just on their own. You really need to put in the time and the effort to learn the solution by heart. So let me try to guide you to how to find a certification, and then afterwards we'll talk about how to tackle the certification. So here on the desktop, you can see that I'm currently on the SAP Help portal, which is available at sap.help.com. If you click on the learning journeys, you will be able to search for example, for a product or for some kind of area. Let's just click on the SAP Cloud Platform as an example, and we'll see quite a lot of different learning journeys. There are 43 marked as SAP Cloud Platform relevant. What we can do as well is we can filter it by role. So we can, for example, say we are a consultant. Now I've got just 34 learning journeys relevant to me. And if I now take a look at, for example, there should be somewhere basics of SAP Cloud Platform, SAP Cloud Platform Basics here. If I'm now going into the consultant roadmap, I'm being shown a lot of different courses and materials. Some of them are for free. For example, this is just an overview page. There are some links to OpenSAP, which is a massive online course system, and they are available for free. But there are also other things in here which are paid, which is, for example, the course CP100. Now for the certifications, these are highlighted in a golden fashion. The recommended certification for the SAP Cloud Platform Basics would be the Cloud Platform Extensions, which is CCP E12. And the corresponding course, now here is one missing, is CP100. So you should at least read through the ebook. From my experience, you don't need to book a classroom training. And the ebook is available at the SAP Learning Hub, which is not that cheap, but it's worth it. While the classroom training is, I think, at least in Germany, starting from 2,000 euros, which is really a lot of money. So if you are looking for an area to certify in, take a look at the learning journeys, take a look at the whole journey itself, and try to find if there is a certification for your area. That would be one way to find a fitting certification. Now let's say you found some certifications that would interest you, or you don't even have a clue and you want to start looking at a list of all certifications. Is there something like this? Yeah, sure. Let's take a look at it. So currently I'm at training.sap.com, and there is an area Get Certified. If you're clicking on Learn More about certifications, you'll be taken to the next page. You can click on View SAP Global Certifications. So here are all the valid certifications or available certifications listed by name, and there's also an area of soon to expire certifications. If you find a certification you want to take in here, think about taking them, because in the end there is a reason for them being retired. Either they are not up to date anymore, or maybe the product below it isn't really relevant. So once you've found something, let's take for example Activate 12, a project manager certification, click on View Details, and then you're taken to the certification overview page. This page details the certification itself, and you should read through the description if it's something fitting for you. How do you approach a certification? Usually I'm always saying the same thing. I'm using an SAP Learning Hub access and I'm just reading through the materials. But to be a little bit more precise, let's take a look at a certification overview page. This is the overview page for Activate 12, SAP Activate Project Manager. And you'll see on the overview page that there are different topic areas. And the topic areas are weighted. So there are 80 questions in this case, which is the usual amount for an associate certification. 40 questions would be the usual amount for a specialist certification. If you're learning something, you should really focus on the areas that are giving the most benefit to you in your learning approaches. And if you're looking at the details in here, you'll see that most of them are either relevant to the Act 100 course or to the Act 200 course. Act 200 in this case is a more Scrum related course, while the Act 100 is the Activate Overview course with the different phases and the different work streams and so on. Should you simply read through everything now that you know what's in the exam? Definitely not. You can skim through pages of, for example, SAP Press books. You can take a look at different blog posts. There are really good ones for specific certifications. You can also try to get the course material in an earlier version. But be careful. That's not really efficient at all times. If the course material you're reading through is outdated, or if the books that you're reading are not specifically meant for that certification, you can waste a lot of time. And that's what I meant with being efficient. If you are just doing it for the sake of getting a promotion, for the sake of having the certification, then stop on that point. Search something that's really focused on the certification itself. Don't read through random books, don't read through random blog posts. Do something else. Search for practice exams. And I really mean practice exams, not certification dumps, because this in the end won't help you as well. In case you haven't seen it yet, I want to quickly show you the certification page itself, so the page where you're able to register for certifications. This page is belonging to Question Mark, which is a tooling that SAP is using to basically take their certification. So it's a secure browser that you'll need to install. So you'll need to install this Question Mark secure browser, and the proctors from Examity will help you in launching this kind of browser. And after the certification is done, the application will be closed. On the exam dashboard, you'll see that you can register, you'll see your attempts remaining, and then you'll click on Schedule an Exam. And once you click on this one, you can choose a topic, for example, Activate 13. You'll click on the date picker and you can pick a date which is a few hours in advance usually. So this one is in about an hour, and I could say, okay, I want to take the exam in about an hour. Depending on the availability of Examity, it could be that the dates are not available anymore. So if you're not finding anything, or there are like gaps of an hour in between, it's usually because they've got a high demand. After you've selected your time and you've booked your appointments, you'll find these appointments at Exam Appointments. In there you'll see a list of your appointments, and you can join 15 minutes earlier. So usually you'll wait for a proctor to appear, and then you'll be taken through the exam process and the ID verification process. Are certifications worth it? I've been asked that multiple times, and I've recently had a interesting discussion with some colleagues. And basically, we could agree that we couldn't agree. Because some of us had good experiences while others said they don't really know what it's worth for. And to be really honest with you, I think it really depends on your situation. Because all of us are doing certifications for different reasons. Some I know are forced to do them to get a promotion, which is a completely different case than somebody trying to find a job or trying to learn something new. You need to answer that question for yourself. For me personally, I'm somewhere in the middle. I never had the feeling that the certifications themselves are something that would grant some benefit, besides giving you some kind of door opener. So usually if I'm having a certification, I'm just included into a list that without them, I maybe wouldn't have been included into. But it's not that they themselves are saying, hey, hooray, you've got that certification, done, you're in. So there are some kind of credentials, but credentials only take you so far. You need to have the underlying knowledge. So try not to think about a certification as something that will give you benefit out of itself. It will help you in combination with a solid foundation of knowledge. Now that you've finished your certification, what else is out there? Well, first of all, you've probably got 6 certification attempts. Now, if you've nailed it in the first attempt, you could do 5 more certifications. But is that something you need to do? I don't think so. For sure you can use them, and it is wise if you use them, but you don't need to do it immediately. I think something that you should concentrate on is called career capital. I think this concept is from Cal Newport in his book, So Good They Can't Ignore You. And what he's basically saying is that you should have a kind of craftsman mindset. You shouldn't think about what is making you happy, but you should hone your skills and happiness will come to you. And I think certifications are some kind of credentials, but in order to have some value, you need to have the underlying skills. And you should also take a look outside of the SAP world. So in my time at SAP now, I think some products, there are now 2 or 3 that have been cancelled, which I was quite interested in, and I've built up quite some knowledge. And with the products being gone, the whole knowledge wasn't worth anything anymore. That's why you should also concentrate on some kind of general skills. As you've got different roles, different goals, and different motivations, it's difficult to give one path for everyone. But for project managers, I think it's quite easy. You could take a look at the Certified Associate in Project Management or the Project Management Professional. I think it's rather known as PMP, which is a quite general project management knowledge that's also referred to in the SAP material. That's something that you could also use outside of SAP's world, or if they are going away from the Activate methodology. On the other side, as a developer, it's a little bit more difficult. That's why I've created some kind of roadmap for colleagues of mine. This roadmap doesn't only contain SAP products, but it's containing more general stuff around it, going from integrated development environment to different, let's say, principles and methodologies, such as test-driven design and Scrum. And I would like to take a moment to guide you through that journey. If you are not interested in a backend developer journey on the SAP Cloud Platform, I don't think that the following part of the video is creating much benefit for you or much value for you. Alright, with that being said, let's take a look into the roadmap. Alright, so the roadmap is available on GitHub. It's in the repository of Consolvis, and it's called SAP Cloud Platform Backend Developer Roadmap. In there's a little bit more of text, which is also on the SAP community, but what I want to guide you through is this roadmap itself. A few words in the beginning. The roadmap is quite biased, so it's based on my experience and my guesses around the future, what could be useful, what couldn't be useful, and I'll try to give you some sort of context. So at the beginning, if you want to develop on the SAP Cloud Platform and you're not just, let's say, a citizen developer, you'll probably need to choose between going in the backend route and going the front-end route. The front-end would focus more on stuff like SAP UI5, while the backend is rather around, for example, the cloud application programming model. The next important choice you need to make is what kind of language you'll learn. There are a lot of languages that you can take, and none of them is really wrong. It just depends on your focus. So if you're going, for example, for ABAP because you know ABAP, you should know that it's not really meant to be used in the cloud. Sure, there is the ABAP environment on the SAP Cloud Platform, but it wasn't built for that reason. So be a little bit careful. You won't really benefit from that knowledge outside from the SAP world. For Python, Java, Go, and some other languages, I think they are really valuable, but they wouldn't be the ones I'd take a look at. So what I've marked here is JavaScript and TypeScript. Why is it that way? Because you can utilize this knowledge also in the front end, and you can utilize it, for example, in the serverless environment of SAP Cloud Platform. Currently, there's only JavaScript available, and it's the same with, for example, the script task in SAP Cloud Platform Workflow Management. There's also just JavaScript available. Now, it's not completely in the order that you should learn it. It's more like general decisions. What I would take a look at is version control systems. And that includes a basic usage of Git. So how is a version control system working? What are you doing if you're checking something in? What are you doing if you're pulling something, if you're pushing something? How are you able to revert back a change that you've done? And things like that. This is knowledge that's completely unrelated to SAP, or rather you can also use that knowledge somewhere else. So if you decide that SAP is not your main interest anymore, you could still use some of that knowledge or some of that career capital and apply it somewhere else. And some sort of version control system will be used in every development environment or every product environment. Now, if you're looking here at the basic usage of Git, I've integrated Git flow in here. It's just one way of branching, basically, where you have feature branches, hotfix branches, and stuff like that. So you're not just working on a development branch and a main branch. And yeah, it's just one way of working. It's not the perfect one. It's the one we've decided for. On the other side, you'll probably have some sort of hosting service, which could be GitLab, which could be Bitbucket. It could be something included in, for example, Microsoft Azure, but we have GitHub, so I've highlighted GitHub in here. Next up, you should learn about your development environment. And now here I've got two choices highlighted. The SAP Business Application Studio is something that SAP is providing on the SAP Cloud Platform. It has some benefits if you're, for example, modeling workflows, because you've got, so with SAP Cloud Platform Workflow Management, because in there you've got a graphical editor, which you don't have in, for example, Visual Studio Code, Eclipse, or somewhere else. Different from that, so besides the SAP specific functionalities, I'd probably always go for local Visual Studio Code, because that's way more adaptable. And if I don't have a license for the SAP Business Application Studio, I'm not really allowed to use it in a productive environment. So I'm usually going with Visual Studio Code with a lot of own extensions installed. Now, going a little bit further, there are different tools you can learn about, ranging from package managers, just as the Node package manager, task runners, linters, formatters, which will really help you working in a distributed team. So for example, as lint as well as Prettier, there is no more discussion around how the code should look like and which kind of best practice you want to have in your code. But it's not available for everything. So it's mainly focused around JavaScript and TypeScript. And there might be other and better things out there if you're looking into a different direction. Then if you're going further, you need to pick some sort of framework. So for example, for JavaScript and TypeScript, I noticed there's a typo. It's not natively running in a backend system or on a server. There are different frameworks enabling that, like Node.js, or from the same author, but not that popular at the moment, Dino, which is basically Node just backwards. And on these frameworks themselves, there are other frameworks that enable you to quickly create a server, which is, for example, Express. And on top of Express, there are two things that I highlighted. It's the SAP Cloud Application Programming Model, which is a really simple way to create business applications. It's focused around the SAP environment. So currently the only productive database supported is the HANA database. And besides that, there is a community plugin for, I think, PostgreSQL or PostgreSQL. But you see that it's quite adapted to the SAP environment. But it's really easy, and I think it's a really good solution. Now on the other side, there's Nest.js as an example. It's an open source framework. It's a little bit more, let's say, broadly usable. So currently, for example, it supports graphical, which the SAP Cloud Application Programming Model does not support. It supports more databases in the productive environment, and it's also included in the SAP Cloud SDK. So it's not a wrong choice, but it's a little bit more complicated than the Cloud Application Programming Model. So if you're sticking with SAP, I tend to start with the SAP Cloud Application Programming Model. Well, next up, I've got a large section around databases. And do I really think you need to do that in the beginning? No, I don't think so. But once you're going to work with a lot of data, it's really useful to learn about the databases in detail, because you can maybe get some more benefits around performance if you know what you're doing. Besides that, I think you're fine with the, let's say, high-level overview of why should you use a NoSQL database or a relational database, where benefits, where drawbacks. On the next step, I've got APIs, and you'll need to learn about APIs if you're working in the cloud. So usually in the SAP environment, you'll probably work with OData, which is just one sort of REST API. And I think that's something that I definitely look at if you're going for the cloud platform. Because there are some, let's say, specifics onto it, like function imports and stuff like that, where you should at least have it heard once to be able to implement it, for example, in the Cloud Application Programming Model. And you should learn about authentication in the cloud, which isn't that trivial as having everything in one stack, including the user management. So something to definitely take a look at. And also this whole area, it's benefiting you also if you're not going for an SAP route. So that's always something to keep in mind. On the other side, I'd continue with learning about testing, because there's nothing more time consuming than having some sort of bug and trying to fix it in a productive environment. That's going to kill your sleep, and I think probably everyone knows it. If something like this happening, it's usually happening either in the evening or on the weekend, and it's always really critical. So using tests can prevent it. It doesn't always prevent it, but it at least reduces the chance of something breaking in production. And on the left side, there's just some sorts of different tests. On the right side, there is some sort of tooling for doing tests. Jest and Supertest are packages available on NPM, while, for example, Wallaby.js, it's a plugin for different IDEs, for example, for Visual Studio Code. And this plugin makes it easier to work in a test-driven way. Also, there's something in the monitoring and software and infrastructure area, because in the cloud, you've got a lot of different solutions. And now something isn't working. Have fun finding where it's breaking. So you should learn about centralized logs on, for example, the SAP Cloud Platform, and take a look at how your application can write into such central logs. CI/CD is also something that's quite popular at the moment. So continuous integration, continuous delivery, and continuous deployment, which is basically taking the code that you've checked into, for example, GitHub, and transporting it or deploying it into different environments. For continuous deployment, it would be automatically into the production environment, while continuous delivery basically stops in front of the production environment and waits for somebody to tick the box and say, okay, it can go to production. There are a lot of toolings below it that you can use to do CI/CD. I think what's most interesting for somebody going to the cloud platform would be the SAP Cloud Platform Continuous Integration Delivery service. Maybe in combination with the SAP Cloud Platform Transport Management, if you also need to transport something in the backend. That's integrated into the, for example, Cloud Application Programming model with something called Project Piper, which is based on the Jenkins open source project. Yeah. Now there are some design and development principles. I probably don't need to go through everything, and that's typical SAP fashion, but it's not from SAP. So some kind of abbreviations with 3 letters, which is test-driven development. So you should write tests first before you're writing code. Solid, I think there are quite good videos from Bob Martin on that topic, which you should look at on YouTube. Dry is just don't repeat yourself. KISS, keep it short and simple, or a more root version of it. Yagni, or I don't know how to speak or how to say that, it's you ain't gonna need it. So don't build something that you don't currently need, because in the end you most probably won't need it anyways. And 12-factor app is quite popular, let's say, manifesto on how to build applications for cloud environments. If you're reading through it, I'd recommend to search for a book on O'Reilly, which is giving some thoughts about each factor and adds 3 more factors. I think it's available for free. I just currently don't remember who was offering it for free, but search for a book on that topic. You'll probably find it, and it will give you more background knowledge on what's good about the factors, what's bad, what's maybe missing, than the 12-factor app homepage itself. I think it's available, so the 12-factor app is available at 12factor.net. But I would need to check. Scrum, I've got it in here and not on some kind of programming project management principles, because for me, Scrum isn't really saying anything about project management. It's more about how you can efficiently work. And so I've got it in here. It's just something you should at least have heard if you're going into a development role, or if you're planning on working as a developer. Architectural patterns, I won't go into that as well. Just keep a look at the 12-factor app, and probably you can link the fitting architectural patterns to the cloud environments. It's something that requires more time. I think on each of these topics you could do a course on its own. Serverless is currently quite hot, which basically doesn't mean there are no servers involved, but you don't need to care about them. So you're just entering code, and that code is being run. An example would be SAP Cloud Platform serverless environment, or for example, AWS Lambdas. Now, message brokers are only relevant, or really relevant, if you're going for an event-driven architecture. They are really useful in a cloud environment because you are able to do more in a asynchronous way. And also, for example, SAP S/4HANA is more and more going to support events, and then you should take a look at message brokers. And now we are coming more and more into an SAP area, which is getting to know the platform. So if you're working on an SAP platform, you should know the basics of Cloud Foundry. So what's really valuable around Cloud Foundry and what's specific of SAP Cloud Platform Cloud Foundry. And all the others are also environments available on the SAP Cloud Platform. And currently a lot of traction has Schema and serverless. But I think if I remember correctly, serverless and ABAP are also built in the background, so you don't notice it on the Cloud Foundry environment. And if you're working on the cloud platform, you should also take a look at the SAP Cloud SDK, which, for example, enables you to connect to services on Cloud Foundry quite easily. It enables you to consume APIs from the SAP API Business Hub quite easily and stuff like that. And then we are already going into the last areas that I would recommend, which is building for scale. First of all, you need to build something. And then if you are successful or your company is successful, you need to be able to scale it. And there are some things that are more important than others. Multi-tenancy, for example, is the functionality that you provide something in your, for example, SAP Cloud Platform account, and somebody else is able to consume it from his different Cloud Platform account. That's, for example, how SAP Cloud Platform Workflow Management and some other solutions are realized. And that could be something interesting for you. On the other side, horizontal scaling versus vertical scaling is just something that's also aligned with the 12-factor app. Basically, horizontal scaling would be that you are spinning up more instances of the same service and you are distributing calls through the instances. Which is, for example, enabled by Cloud Foundry, while vertical scaling would be that you are just giving the same service more, for example, application memory. All right, there's some more interesting stuff if you're going into details. For example, feature flags. Feature flags enable you to ship something but not activate it for everybody. So that you can use, for example, continuous deployment and still have some sort of features hidden behind the flag so that you can beta test it with some customers before generally releasing it. And then on the last area, which for me was something, if everything else is learned, or you could also start in a different direction, but it's something more on a process level. So really creating benefit in a quick manner for a company. And there's, for example, SAP Cloud Platform Workflow Management, which is a solution to improve and automate business processes. For example, workflow is about automating workflows. Business rules is about automating decisions. And that's something that you could look at depending on your case. There are also specialists in each of these areas. For example, I'm specializing in basically both of the areas highlighted here. And that's also what I'm going to build up with my colleagues. So that's why these two areas are highlighted in here. Now, I'm always trying to have some kind of standards in here, which is the decision model and notation for the decision management. And in that case, it relates to the business rules, the business process management and business process model and notation for the workflows. And what that allows is to basically first model something unrelated to software so that you can codify your processes or rules or decisions and then automate it with the software. And that's the same over here at the conversational AI area, which is about chatbots. I think you should first learn about conversational design before you're going into the software of it, because the software you're building can only be as good as your ideas, your creativity behind it. And your creativity or your ideas are probably limited by what you know. So I would start with some kind of foundation and then go into the software. And if later on I would decide, okay, SAP conversational AI is not interesting for me anymore, I could drop these 2 boxes and just use, for example, Dialogflow from Google, or use something else. I think Nuanced Dragon Speaking, they have some kind of chatbot software as well. The conversational design fundamentals would still apply. And it's the same on the area here. So for the business process model annotation and the decision model annotation, there's other software out there. For example, I think Camundo, they have some sort of automation software for BPMN and DMN. I could also drop these boxes and switch it out. It's just that you should have some kind of foundation, and then you can fill up that foundation with the related software. Now for me, I've got then 2 more areas which are basically grayed out, which is Qualtrics, or the whole notion of employee experience, customer experience. I think it's really valuable knowing about it, but in the roadmap I've created for my colleagues, it's not that important yet. The same with the front-end technologies. If you're looking through the roadmap, you'll need some time. So looking at the front-end technologies was not the highest priority. So as I wrote here, it's my recommendation to start on the cloud platform as a backend developer, but it's just my recommendation and what I've built up for my business and for my colleagues. And your situation could be completely different. So I know quite some people that are going for the whole integration route with a SAP Cloud Platform Integration Suite and a Cloud Connector. And I lack complete knowledge in that area. Or not complete knowledge, but besides the basics and what's necessary for certification, I don't know anything about it. And I won't learn about it because I would be stretching too thin. So try to find something that you are interested in the first hand, stick to it and hone your skills. Try to develop some kind of craftsman mindset and build up your, let's call it, career capital over time. And I think then you're able to really benefit from it. Because if you're always switching around, you won't build up any reputation, you won't build up deep knowledge. And in the end, why should somebody hire you? Why should you get the job? Why should you get the project if you can't really say you're proficient in that kind of area? All right, I think that was quite a long story. And if you've sticked around until the end, drop me a message and some sort of course of mine that you're interested in, and I'll try to create a coupon for you. I think you've deserved it. All right, and then if you want to know something else, just drop me a message, and goodbye.